I've been staring at my reflection for 20 minutes now, but the woman looking back at me is a stranger. Purple bruises bloom along my collarbone like toxic flowers, and my left eye carries a yellowish tint that makeup can't quite hide. The bathroom light is harsh, unforgiving. It shows every mark James left on me last night. My name is Nicole Taylor, and I'm supposed to be someone who protects people. I run a security consulting firm that's actually doing pretty damn well, thank you very much. Fortune 500 companies pay me big money to tell them how to keep their executives safe. The irony isn't lost on me that I can't even protect myself from my own boyfriend. "You done primping in there?" James called from the bedroom. His voice carries that edge I've learned to fear. "We're gonna be late for dinner." I took one last look at the bruises and pulled on a turtleneck. Sacramento's fall weather gave me the perfect excuse to cover up. It's amazing how good you get at hiding damage when you practice every day. The restaurant James picked was one of those overpriced steakhouses where middle-aged men go to feel important. His buddies were already there, loud and obnoxious, talking about their latest business deals and golf games. I smiled and nodded like the good girlfriend I was supposed to be. "Nicole here thinks she's some hotshot security expert," James announced to the table, his hand squeezing my thigh under the tablecloth. "Tell them about that client who fired you last month." My stomach dropped. That client hadn't fired me. I'd quit because the CEO couldn't keep his hands to himself. But James loved twisting my stories, making me look incompetent, making me small. "It wasn't like that," I started, but James cut me off. "Sure it wasn't. Face it, baby, you're barely keeping that little company afloat. Good thing you got me to take care of you." His friends laughed, and I felt something die inside me. These weren't even my friends. These were his people, and in their world I was just James's girlfriend. Not Nicole Taylor, successful businesswoman. Just an accessory. Later that night, I lay in bed listening to James snore while my mind raced. The ceiling fan cast moving shadows across the room, and I found myself counting them, trying to make sense of how I'd ended up here. 3 years ago, I'd been confident, independent, running my own show. Now I jumped every time he raised his voice. I thought about my business, about the clients who respected my expertise, about the life I'd built before James systematically tore it down. Piece by piece, he'd isolated me from friends, questioned every decision, made me doubt everything I knew about myself. But tonight felt different. Tonight something had shifted when he humiliated me in front of those men. Maybe it was the way they looked at me, like I was nothing. Or maybe it was seeing myself through their eyes and hating what I saw. I needed to get out. The thought hit me like a freight train, clear and undeniable. I needed to get out before there was nothing left of Nicole Taylor to save. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. Well, maybe not a plan exactly, but at least a destination. My dog Charlie needed food, and PetSmart was far enough from our neighborhood that I wouldn't run into anyone James knew. Small victories, right? The store was busy for a Tuesday afternoon. I was reaching for Charlie's favorite squeaky bone toy when another hand grabbed the same package. We both froze for a second, then laughed. "Sorry. Looks like we have the same taste," the woman said, pulling her hand back. She had the kind of smile that made you want to smile back, genuine and warm. Blonde hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing a tailored blazer that screamed successful businesswoman. "No problem. There's plenty more," I said, grabbing another package. "Your dog must be about Charlie's size." Muffin's actually a spoiled princess who thinks she deserves every toy in the store. She extended her hand. "I'm Brianna Smith." Nicole Taylor. Her handshake was firm, confident. Everything I used to be. "Want to grab coffee? There's a place next door, and I could use a break from spreadsheets." I should have said no. James would be furious if he found out I'd talked to a stranger, especially another woman. But something about Brianna made me want to remember what normal conversation felt like. Sure, why not? The coffee shop was one of those cozy places with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. Brianna ordered some complicated latte while I stuck with black coffee. We found a corner table away from the crowd. "So what do you do, Nicole?" she asked, stirring her drink. "Security consulting. I help companies protect their executives, assess threats, that sort of thing." It felt good saying it, owning it. "That's fascinating. I run a marketing firm here in Sacramento. Always wondered about the security side of business." She leaned forward, genuinely interested. "What got you into that field?" For the next hour, we talked shop. Real conversation about strategy, client management, the challenges of running your own business. Brianna listened when I spoke, asked smart questions, treated my opinions like they mattered. I'd forgotten what that felt like. "You're really good at this," she said, as I explained a recent case involving corporate espionage. "Your clients are lucky to have someone with your expertise." When was the last time someone had complimented my work? When was the last time anyone had made me feel capable instead of worthless? "I should get going," I said reluctantly, checking my phone. 3 missed calls from James. This was great. "Maybe we could do it again sometime?" Brianna handed me her business card. "I mean, if you want to." I took the card, our fingers brushing briefly. I'd like that. But by the time I got home, James was pacing the living room like a caged animal. "Where the hell were you?" "I've been calling for hours." "Just running errands." Charlie needed food. He grabbed my purse, dumping the contents on the coffee table. The business card fluttered out among my keys and wallet. "What's this?" He picked up Brianna's card, his face darkening. "Brianna Smith, Marketing Solutions." "Who the fuck is Brianna Smith?" "Just someone I met at the store." We talked for a few minutes. "You talked for a few minutes?" His voice was getting that dangerous edge. "About what?" "Nothing important. Business stuff." James stepped closer, backing me against the wall. "Listen to me very carefully. You don't need new friends. You don't need to talk business with random women. You have me, and that's enough." He tore up Brianna's card, letting the pieces fall to the floor. "Don't let me catch you talking to her again. Are we clear?" I nodded, but inside something was rebelling. For 1 hour today, I'd felt like myself again. Like Nicole Taylor, not just James's beaten-down girlfriend. And damn it, I wanted that feeling back. 3 days later, I did something I hadn't done in years. I lied to James about where I was going, and met Brianna for lunch at a small bistro downtown. My hands were shaking as I walked in, but when I saw her smile, some of the fear melted away. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said, standing to hug me. The embrace was brief but warm, and I caught a hint of her perfume, something light and citrusy. Neither was I, honestly. I slid into the booth across from her. "This is probably a terrible idea." "Why? Because your boyfriend doesn't want you having friends?" The directness of her question caught me off guard. Most people danced around uncomfortable topics, but Brianna just put it out there. "It's complicated," I said, studying the menu to avoid her eyes. "Nicole, I've been in business long enough to recognize when someone's walking on eggshells. You don't have to explain, but you also don't have to live like that." Over lunch, we talked about everything except James. Brianna told me about expanding her marketing firm, about the challenges of being a woman in business, about her ridiculous spoiled dog Muffin who apparently had separation anxiety. I found myself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in months. "You should do that more often," she said, watching me over her wine glass. "What?" "Laugh. You light up when you're not worried about something." Our lunches became a weekly thing, then twice weekly. I told James I was networking for business, which wasn't entirely a lie. Brianna introduced me to other female entrepreneurs, women who ran their own companies and didn't apologize for their success. Being around them reminded me who I used to be. But it was more than that. There was something about Brianna herself that drew me in. The way she listened when I talked about security protocols, genuinely interested in my expertise. How she'd touch my arm when making a point, casual but electric. The way she looked at me sometimes, like she saw past all the damage James had done. One afternoon she noticed the fading bruises on my wrist when I reached for my coffee cup. "Nicole." Her voice was gentle but firm. "What happened to your arm?" I pulled my sleeve down quickly. "Nothing. I'm clumsy." She didn't buy it, but she didn't push either. Instead, she reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. Her touch was so different from James's, soft where his was rough, comforting where his was controlling. "You know you can talk to me, right? About anything." I wanted to tell her everything. About the bruises, the constant criticism, the way James made me feel like I was disappearing piece by piece. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I turned my hand over so our palms were touching. "Thank you for being my friend." Something shifted in her expression. Something I couldn't quite name. "Is that what we are? Friends?" Before I could answer, she leaned across the table and kissed me. Soft, tentative, like she was asking a question. My whole world tilted on its axis. I'd never been kissed by a woman before, never even thought about it, but this felt right in a way nothing had for years. We broke apart, both breathing hard. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I shouldn't have—" "Don't apologize." My voice came out rougher than I intended. "Please don't apologize." We sat there staring at each other, the air between us charged with possibility and fear. That's when James appeared beside our table. Well, what do we have here? My blood turned to ice. He must have followed me, must have been watching. His face was calm, but I knew that expression. It meant trouble. "James, this isn't—" "Shut up, Nicole." He turned to Brianna, who was sitting very still, her hand still covering mine. "You must be the marketing lady. Brianna, right?" "That's right." Her voice was steady, but I felt her hand tighten on mine. "Funny thing about marketing. It's all about selling something, isn't it? Making people want things they don't need." He leaned down, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Stay away from my girlfriend, or you'll find out what I do to people who try to steal from me." He straightened up, smiled that cold smile I knew too well, and walked away. Brianna was quiet for a long moment, then squeezed my hand. "Nicole, you need to get away from him." I knew she was right, but knowing and doing were two very different things. After James's threat, I expected Brianna to disappear from my life. Smart, successful women don't get involved in other people's messy situations. But she didn't run. Instead, she texted me the next morning asking if I was okay. Then she asked if I wanted to meet at her office that evening to talk. Her marketing firm occupied the top floor of a downtown building, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. At 8 p.m., the place was empty except for us. I found her at her desk, surrounded by campaign mock-ups and strategy documents. "You didn't have to stay late," I said from the doorway. I wanted to. Besides, I do my best thinking after hours. She gestured to a chair beside her desk. "How are you holding up?" I sat down, suddenly exhausted. He didn't hit me, if that's what you're asking. But he knows about us now, about the lunches, the conversations. He's watching everything. "And yesterday? When I kissed you?" The question hung in the air between us. I'd been thinking about that kiss nonstop, replaying the moment when everything changed. "I've never felt that way about another woman before," I admitted. "Hell, I've never felt that way about anyone, period. Not even James in the beginning." Brianna turned her chair to face me fully. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that when you kissed me, it was the first time in years that I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be." She reached for my hand, and I didn't pull away this time. "Nicole, I need you to know that I wasn't trying to complicate your life. But I can't pretend I don't have feelings for you." Before I could lose my nerve, I leaned forward and kissed her. This time it wasn't tentative or questioning. This time I was sure. Her lips were soft, and she tasted like coffee and possibility. When we broke apart, she rested her forehead against mine. "What happens now?" I whispered. "I don't know. But I know I want to find out." Thunder rumbled outside, and rain began pelting the windows. The storm had come out of nowhere, typical for Sacramento's unpredictable fall weather. "I should get going," I said reluctantly. "You can't drive in this. It's torrential out there." She was right. The rain was coming down so hard we could barely see the street below. We went down to the parking garage to wait it out in her car, but the storm only got worse. "Looks like we're stuck for a while," she said, turning off the engine. We sat in the dim light of the parking garage, rain drumming on the roof above us. The space felt intimate, separate from the rest of the world. "Tell me about before," she said quietly. "Before James." So I did. I told her about starting my security firm, about the rush of landing my first big client, about feeling like I could take on the world. I told her about the woman I used to be, confident and decisive and unafraid. "She's still there, you know," Brianna said. "That woman. I see her every time we talk business, every time you forget to be scared." Lightning illuminated the garage, and in that flash of light, I saw something in her eyes that made my heart race. Without thinking, I reached for her, pulling her closer across the center console. She came willingly, her hands sliding into my hair as our lips met. This kiss was different from the others, deeper, more urgent, like we were both drowning and this was our only source of air. Her hands traced the line of my jaw, and I felt something inside me that had been frozen for years finally start to thaw. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. I should feel guilty about this, I said against her lips. Do you? I considered the question honestly. No. I should, but I don't. Is that terrible? No, Nicole. It's human. We stayed in that car for another hour, talking and kissing and discovering this new thing between us. The rain eventually stopped, but neither of us wanted to leave the bubble of intimacy we'd created. Finally, I knew I had to go home. James would be suspicious if I was gone too long. This isn't over, Brianna said as I got out of her car. Whatever we're doing, whatever this is between us, I'm not giving up on it. Neither am I replied, surprising myself with the conviction in my voice. As I drove home through the wet streets, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, hope. For the first time since I'd been with James, I could imagine a different future. A future where I didn't have to hide who I was or apologize for what I wanted. A future with Brianna. The first time I lost time, I blamed it on stress. I was sitting at my kitchen table working on a security assessment when suddenly I was standing in my bedroom, holding a glass of water I didn't remember getting. The clock said 3 hours had passed, but it felt like minutes. James was watching me from the doorway with that strange smile he got sometimes. You okay, baby? You seemed a little out of it. Just tired, I said, but my mouth felt cotton dry and my thoughts were fuzzy around the edges. It started happening more frequently after that. I'd be reviewing client files and suddenly find myself on the couch with no memory of moving. Or I'd wake up in the middle of the afternoon, fully dressed but disoriented, with James telling me I'd been napping for hours. The worst part was how my routine completely fell apart. I'd always been organized, methodical. Now I was missing appointments, forgetting important calls, showing up to meetings unprepared. My business was suffering, and I couldn't figure out why I felt so scattered all the time. Maybe you should see a doctor, James suggested one evening as I stared blankly at my laptop screen. You've been acting strange lately. Strange. That was one way to put it. I felt like I was living someone else's life, watching myself from a distance. Sometimes I'd catch glimpses of clarity, moments when the fog would lift and I'd remember meeting Brianna, remember the way she made me feel alive again. But then the haze would return, and those memories felt like dreams. The only constant was my need to see her. Even when I couldn't remember why, I found myself texting Brianna, asking to meet. She always said yes, and somehow being with her helped cut through the confusion. One afternoon, I found myself in her office again, with no clear memory of how I'd gotten there. She was sitting across from me, concern written all over her face. Nicole, when did you last eat? I tried to remember but couldn't. This morning, I think? It's 4 p.m. And you said the same thing yesterday when I asked. She ordered food from the deli downstairs and watched me eat every bite. The simple act of nourishment seemed to clear my head slightly. Something's wrong with me, I said, putting down my sandwich. I keep losing chunks of time. I can't focus on anything. My whole life feels like it's falling apart. Brianna moved her chair closer to mine. When did this start? A few weeks ago. Right after James found out about us. Her expression darkened. Nicole, I need to ask you something, and I want you to really think about the answer. Has James been giving you anything? Medicine, drinks, food? What do you mean? Has he been unusually attentive? Bringing you coffee in the morning, making you dinner, insisting you take vitamins or supplements? I tried to focus, to push through the mental fog. He's been making me smoothies every morning, says I need to eat better, take care of myself. And how do you feel after you drink them? The question hit me like a physical blow, tired, confused, like I'm not quite present. Brianna took my hands in hers. Nicole, I think James might be drugging you. The words should have shocked me, but instead they felt like a missing puzzle piece clicking into place. The lost time, the confusion, the way James watched me sometimes like he was waiting for something. But why would he? Control. If you're disoriented and dependent on him, you can't leave. You can't think clearly enough to realize what he's doing to you. As if summoned by our conversation, my phone buzzed with a text from James. Where are you? Come home now. I have to go, I said, standing up too quickly. The room spun and Brianna caught my arm. Stay here tonight. Please, you're not safe with him. I can't. If I don't go home, he'll come looking for me. And if he finds me here with you. She understood. James had already threatened her once. But as I drove home through the Sacramento twilight, something had shifted. The fog in my mind was lifting, replaced by a cold, clear anger. James wasn't just controlling me anymore. He was poisoning me, stealing pieces of my consciousness, my memory, my very self. When I walked into our apartment, he was waiting with a fresh smoothie. "There you are. I was worried. You seemed so tired this morning, I thought you might need some extra vitamins." He held out the glass, that same strange smile playing at his lips. For the first time in weeks I saw him clearly. Not as my boyfriend, not as someone who claimed to love me, but as exactly what he was, a predator. "Thanks," I said, taking the smoothie. "I'll drink it in a minute." As soon as he left the room, I poured the contents down the sink and filled the glass with water. Then I sat at the kitchen table and began to plan. If James wanted to play games with my mind, he was about to discover that I was very good at games. After all, I was a security expert. I knew all about threats and how to neutralize them. And James Martin had just become my primary target. The next morning, I pretended to drink James's poisoned smoothie while secretly dumping it in the potted plant by the kitchen window. Within an hour, my head was clearer than it had been in weeks. The fog that had clouded my thoughts was lifting, and with it came a cold, calculating fury. I was Nicole Taylor, damn it. I'd built a security consulting business from nothing. I knew how to assess threats, gather intelligence, and neutralize dangerous situations. It was time to use those skills on my own life. Step 1 was documentation. I installed a tiny wireless camera in the kitchen, no bigger than a button, hidden inside the coffee maker. If James was drugging my food and drinks, I needed proof. I also placed audio recording devices in strategic locations throughout the apartment, all equipment I kept for client security assessments. The hardest part was acting normal while staying alert. I had to pretend the drugs were still working, moving slowly and seeming confused while actually watching everything James did with sharp focus. Within 3 days, I had what I needed. Video footage of James crushing pills into my smoothie ingredients. Audio recordings of phone calls where he bragged to someone about keeping me manageable and under control. Evidence that would hold up in court. But I needed help with the next phase, and there was only one person I trusted completely. I met Brianna at a different coffee shop across town, somewhere James wouldn't think to look. She took one look at my face and knew something had changed. "You're back," she said simply. I stopped drinking his damn smoothies. "You were right, Brianna. He's been drugging me with some kind of sedative. I have proof." I showed her the footage on my phone, watched her face go pale with anger. "That sick bastard." "Nicole, we need to call the police." "Not yet. I need more than just the drugging. I need evidence of the physical abuse, the threats he made against you, everything. One comprehensive case that will put him away for a long time." She reached across the table and took my hand. "What do you need me to do?" "Help me document everything. Financial records, medical records if I can get them, witness statements. I want to build a case so solid that he can never hurt me or anyone else again." Over the next week, we worked like a team. Brianna used her business connections to find me a lawyer who specialized in domestic abuse cases. We gathered bank statements showing how James had been systematically isolating me financially, trying to make me dependent on him. I documented every bruise, every threat, every instance of emotional manipulation I could remember. The lawyer, Patricia Chen, was impressed with our thoroughness. "This is some of the most comprehensive documentation I've seen in a domestic abuse case," she said, reviewing our files. "You could definitely get a restraining order, probably criminal charges too." "That's not enough," I said. "He's smart, manipulative. He'll find ways around a restraining order. I need him completely out of my life, and I need protection for Brianna too." Patricia nodded. "Then we need to catch him in the act of violating the law in a way that's undeniable, something that would result in immediate arrest and significant jail time." That's when I came up with the plan. James had been getting more suspicious about my improved mental state. He'd started varying the drugs, sometimes putting them in my coffee instead of the smoothies, or slipping them into dinner. But I'd gotten good at pretending to consume things while actually disposing of them. "He's going to escalate soon," I told Brianna during one of our planning sessions. "Men like James don't handle losing control well. When he realizes the drugs aren't working anymore, he'll try something more direct." "What do you mean?" "Violence. He'll try to physically force me back into submission. And when he does, I'll be ready." I installed more cameras, including one in the bedroom that was completely invisible. I made sure my phone was always recording audio. Most importantly, I arranged for Patricia to be on standby with police contacts who could respond immediately. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait for James to walk into it. On Friday night, he came home from drinks with his buddies in a particularly foul mood. I was sitting at the kitchen table, laptop open, working on a legitimate client project for the first time in weeks. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice carrying that familiar edge. "Working. I have a deadline tomorrow." "You look different, more alert." He studied my face with narrowed eyes. "Have you been taking your vitamins?" "Of course." I kept my tone casual, but my finger was already hovering over the emergency contact button on my phone. "I don't think you have." He moved closer, backing me against the table. "I think you've been dumping them out, playing games with me." This was it. The moment of truth. "You're damn right I've been dumping them out," I said, standing up to face him. "I know what you've been doing, James. The sedatives, the manipulation, all of it." His face went from surprise to rage in seconds. "You ungrateful bitch. Everything I did was to help you, to keep you safe from making stupid decisions." "Like what? Having friends? Running my own business? Thinking for myself?" He grabbed my wrist, squeezing hard enough to leave marks. "Perfect. The cameras were recording everything. You belong to me, Nicole. I made you into something better than you were, and I can unmake you just as easily. Let go of me, James." Instead, he tightened his grip and pulled me closer. "You think that marketing whore cares about you? She's just playing games, using you for whatever sick fantasy she has. No one else would put up with your shit like I do." I activated the emergency signal on my phone with my free hand. Patricia and the police would be here within minutes. "You're wrong about Brianna. She sees who I really am, not some broken thing that needs fixing." James backhanded me across the face, hard enough to split my lip. "Don't you ever mention her name in this house again." Blood trickled down my chin, but I smiled. "Too late for that, isn't it? You already lost me to her." That's when he completely lost control. He shoved me against the wall, his hands around my throat. I should have dealt with this problem weeks ago. Should have made sure that bitch understood what happens to people who steal from me. "What are you talking about?" "I've been watching her, Nicole. Following her home, learning her routine. That fancy office building, her little house in Midtown. She has no idea how easy it would be to hurt her." My blood ran cold. He wasn't just threatening me anymore. He was planning to go after Brianna. "You stay away from her, James. This is between you and me." "No, it's not. She made it her business when she turned you against me. Now she's going to pay for it." He released my throat and stepped back, pulling out his phone. "In fact, I think I'll pay her a visit tonight. Teach her what happens to women who don't know their place." That's when I heard the most beautiful sound in the world. Sirens in the distance, getting closer. James heard them too. His head snapped toward the window, then back to me. "You called the cops? You stupid—" The front door burst open. "Sacramento police, hands where we can see them." James spun around, his face a mask of fury and panic. "This is my house. She's my girlfriend. You have no right." "James Martin, you're under arrest for domestic violence, assault, and criminal threats." Officer Rodriguez, who Patricia had briefed on the situation, stepped forward with handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent." As they read him his rights, James kept screaming at me. "This isn't over, Nicole. You think you can just throw away 3 years? You think that dyke is going to want you when she sees what you really are?" But his words couldn't touch me anymore. I had my evidence, my witnesses, my freedom. Most importantly, I had proof of his threats against Brianna, which would be added to the charges. After they took him away, I sat in my kitchen with Officer Rodriguez and Patricia, giving my official statement. The cameras had captured everything perfectly. The audio was crystal clear. James had essentially confessed to months of drugging me and had threatened Brianna's life in front of police officers. "He won't be getting bail," Patricia assured me. "Not with the flight risk assessment and the threats against Miss Smith. You're both safe now." But even as relief flooded through me, I knew this was just the beginning. James was the kind of man who held grudges, who saw women as possessions to be controlled. Prison might contain him physically, but his hatred would only grow stronger. I called Brianna as soon as the police left. "It's over," I said when she answered. "He's been arrested. We have everything on tape." "Thank God. Are you okay? Are you hurt?" I'm fine. But Brianna, he was planning to come after you tonight. He's been stalking you, learning your routine. Silence on the other end of the line. Brianna? I'm here. I'm just processing. Nicole, you could have been killed tonight. But I wasn't. And now he can't hurt either of us anymore. I hoped I was right. But something told me James Martin wasn't done with us yet. I was naive to think prison would stop James. 3 weeks after his arrest, Brianna's car was vandalized outside her office building. Someone had keyed deep scratches into the paint and slashed 2 tires. The security cameras had mysteriously malfunctioned that night. He's got friends, I told Patricia during our emergency meeting. James always bragged about his connections, people who owed him favors. Patricia reviewed the police report with a grim expression. Proving he's behind it from jail is nearly impossible. He's too smart to use the monitored phone system. That's when Brianna's business started getting harassed. Anonymous calls to her clients claiming she was unreliable, unprofessional, mixed up in criminal activity. 3 major accounts canceled their contracts within a week. This has to stop, Brianna said during one of our late-night strategy sessions. He's destroying my reputation, my livelihood. I watched her pace around her office, saw the stress lines that hadn't been there a month ago. This brilliant, successful woman was being torn down by a man who couldn't even touch her directly. I'm going to end this, I said quietly. What do you mean? I mean, I'm going to use everything I know about security, surveillance, and investigation to turn his own game against him. The plan was complex but elegant. James thought he was untouchable in prison, pulling strings through intermediaries. But every criminal network has weaknesses, and I knew how to find them. First, I hired a private investigator to trace the harassment back to its source. Within a week, we had identified James's cousin Rick as the primary operator, along with 2 of his drinking buddies who were making the threatening calls to Brianna's clients. Next, I set up surveillance on all 3 men. I used my professional equipment and contacts to document their activities, their communications, their patterns of behavior. I was building a case that would connect them directly to James in the harassment campaign. But the breakthrough came when I realized James had made a crucial mistake. He was so focused on hurting Brianna that he'd overlooked something important. I was still running a security consulting business, and I still had powerful clients who valued my expertise. I called Margaret Harrison, CEO of one of Sacramento's largest tech companies, and my most influential client. Margaret, I need a favor. A big one. An hour later, I was in her corner office overlooking the Sacramento River, laying out the entire situation. Margaret listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker by the minute. This man has been systematically harassing you and your partner? Girlfriend, I corrected. And yes, he's trying to destroy both our businesses from prison. Margaret leaned back in her chair. Nicole, you've saved our company millions in security upgrades and threat assessment. You've earned some serious loyalty here. She made 3 phone calls. The first was to the district attorney, whom she'd known since college. The second was to the head of Sacramento PD's organized crime unit. The third was to a federal prosecutor who specialized in racketeering cases. Harassment campaigns coordinated from prison involving multiple perpetrators across state lines, Margaret explained to each call. Potential RICO violations. Within 24 hours, Rick and his associates were arrested in a coordinated operation. The evidence I'd gathered made the cases airtight. More importantly, prison officials discovered James had been using a smuggled cell phone to coordinate the harassment, a serious federal offense that would add years to his sentence. The final confrontation happened at the Sacramento County Jail. James had requested to see me, probably thinking he could manipulate or threaten me one last time. I sat across from him in the visiting room, separated by reinforced glass, speaking through monitored phones. "You think you're so smart," he said, his face twisted with rage. "You think you've won. I know I've won, James. Your friends are all in custody. The federal charges will keep you locked up for at least 15 years. And every threat you made, every crime you committed, it's all documented now. This isn't over between us." "Yes, it is." I leaned forward, looking him directly in the eyes. "You tried to control me with drugs and violence. When that failed, you went after the woman I love. But you underestimated something crucial." "What's that?" "I'm very, very good at my job. Security isn't just about protecting people from external threats. Sometimes it's about neutralizing the threat entirely. I stood up to leave but turned back one last time. Oh, and James? Brianna and I are moving in together next month. We're building something beautiful and strong, everything you tried to destroy. Thank you for reminding me what I'm capable of when someone threatens the people I love. His screaming followed me down the hallway, but it couldn't touch me anymore. For the first time in years, I felt completely free. 6 months later, I woke up in a house that actually felt like home. Sunlight streamed through the bedroom windows of the midtown bungalow Brianna and I had bought together, and I could hear her in the kitchen making coffee, humming something off-key that made me smile. My security consulting business was thriving again. Word had gotten out about how I'd handled the James situation, and corporate clients were impressed by my real-world problem-solving skills. Brianna's marketing firm had not only recovered from the harassment campaign, but had landed 3 major new accounts, partly because her existing clients respected how she'd handled the crisis. We were both stronger for having survived it. I found her in the kitchen, wearing one of my old business shirts and nothing else, her blonde hair messy from sleep. She looked up when I walked in, and that smile still made my heart skip. "Good morning, beautiful," she said, handing me a cup of coffee. "Sleep well?" "Better than I have in years." I wrapped my arms around her waist, pulling her close. "Every morning I wake up here feels like a gift." She kissed me softly, tasting like coffee and possibility. "I have something for you." "It's not my birthday." "It's better than a birthday." She pulled away, suddenly nervous. "Nicole, these past months with you have been the best of my life. You're brilliant, brave, funny, and you make me want to be better than I am." She was reaching into her pocket, and my heart started racing. "I know we've been through hell to get here, but maybe that's what makes this so precious." She dropped to one knee right there in our kitchen, holding a simple platinum band with a single diamond. "Nicole Taylor, will you marry me?" For a moment, I couldn't speak. This woman had seen me at my lowest point, had helped me find my strength again, had stood by me when facing down a dangerous man who wanted to destroy us both. She'd never tried to change me or control me. She just loved me exactly as I was. "Yes," I whispered, then louder, "Yes, absolutely yes." She slipped the ring onto my finger with shaking hands, then stood up so I could kiss her properly. We held each other in that sunny kitchen, both of us crying and laughing at the same time. Later, as we sat on our back porch with Charlie and Muffins sprawled at our feet, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. The fear, the pain, the gradual awakening to who I really was and what I really wanted. "Do you ever regret it?" Brianna asked, as if reading my thoughts. "The whole messy process of getting here?" I considered the question seriously. I regret that it took me so long to find myself. I regret that James hurt both of us, but I don't regret the path that led me to you. She took my hand, running her thumb over the engagement ring. "I love you, Nicole Taylor." "I love you too, Brianna Smith. Soon to be Brianna Taylor if you want. I want everything with you. The name, the house, the business partnership, the whole complicated, beautiful mess of building a life together." As the Sacramento sun set behind the trees in our backyard, I realized I'd finally found what I'd been searching for without even knowing it. Not just love, but partnership. Not just acceptance, but celebration of who I was. James was serving 15 years in federal prison. His harassment network had been dismantled. The threats were over, the fear was gone, and what remained was this: a woman who loved me completely, a business I'd rebuilt stronger than before, and a future that belonged entirely to us. I was Nicole Taylor, security consultant, survivor, and soon-to-be wife to the most amazing woman I'd ever met. And for the first time in my adult life, I knew exactly who I was and where I belonged.